Toyota, more like Toyo boring, Toyota is actually the world's largest automobile manufacturer, and they make cars like the Corolla, Prius, other boring stuff like that. But every once and again, Toyota makes something that are completely different from those boring everyday cars, okay? And this can be demonstrated perfectly by the superb but often underrated Lexus LFA. Now, in a nutshell, the Japanese brand was educating the European bigwigs. Toyota will almost certainly be present at any motorsport event. They've won Le Mans the past few years. Toyota's halo car, the Supra, is often regarded as one of the best things to come out of Japan after anime and drifting, of course. Now, this car is a legend in its own right, and it's responsible for basically the entire tuning culture that we have today. Now, this year, Toyota has resurrected the famed Supra brand, but is it the same poster-worthy JDM car that once shocked the world? Even if you aren't a fan of Japanese performance cars, whether JDM or not, the Toyota Supra is certain to have a wealthy respect from you. Many people have been won over by the sports coupe's ability to withstand radical modifications, as well as its incredible durability thanks to the extremely overbuilt and famous, you could probably say it, 2JZ engine, okay? That's why everyone loves this car. Now let's take a look at how the iconic Supra has evolved over the years, and make sure to stay until the end because there is some very interesting facts in here that you're going to want to know. Now let's roll back to the first generation, the A40 and A50, that's what their chassis codes are, and they came from 1979 to about 1981. Now, the Supra was actually a modified version of the 1979 Toyota Celica hatchback. Now, this had a much higher starting price of $9,578. Oh my gosh. But buyers received a well-appointed cabin that bordered on luxury, maybe like a Lexus, and it was also a larger version of the same Celica. Despite the similarity in design though, the Supra of the A40/A50 gen was 8.1 inches longer and had a 5.1 inch longer wheelbase than the Celica. Basically, it was just a bigger Celica, and it was dubbed a Celica with a nose job by who other than Car and Driver. Now, the single overhead cam 110 horsepower 2.6 liter inline 6 was the first Toyota engine with electronic fuel injection. Yes! Now, this was a huge draw for enthusiasts. Very cutting edge technology, gets you more horsepower. 4-wheel independent suspension and 4-wheel disc brakes were among the innovative features that this car brought to the world. A 5-speed manual or 4-speed automatic transmission were available, take your pick. The manual is better though, obviously. Now, for the 1981 model year, the Supra was renamed the A50, and it received a 2.8 liter inline 6-cylinder with 116 horsepower and 145 pound-feet of torque. That's pretty good. Now, according to Road & Track, this car was still slow with a 0 to 60 time of 10.2 seconds, but this is a time when performance was at a scarcity, okay? So 10.2 seconds, not too bad back in this day. From its debut, the Supra was always more of a grand tourer type car. A quote from Car and Driver says, "You're better off cruising in the Supra than attempting to turn life into one big gymkhana." This was mainly referring to the Supra's spongy suspension. Now, in 1981, Toyota added a sport suspension package to increase handling, but the Celica Supra was never mistaken for a Porsche or a Ferrari. But let's move it right along to the second generation, aka the A60. Now, this was 1982 and it ran until 1986. So in 1982, the car was redesigned and it was still a hatchback, but now it had 2 trim levels, alright? So you get an L series, which was $13,598 base, and performance for $14,598. You get fender flares, a lively interior, and bigger wheels and tires were all parts of this performance package. The A60 Celica Supra had a sloping hood with hidden pop-up headlights, and these combined with the angular roof and window line, and this gives it an awesome wedge form. To anyone, this car appears sporty and appealing. For this version, the engine was also improved once again, but the transmission options remained unchanged. Now, the automobile now has a 2.8 liter inline 6-cylinder with 2 overhead cams. According to Car and Driver, output increased to 145 horsepower, 155 pound-feet of torque. This lowered the 0 to 60 mile per hour time to 8.8 seconds. Whew, that's fast. A semi-trailing arm independent rear suspension was also installed, replacing a live rear axle with 4 trailing links and a panhard rod. Up front, McPherson struts were retained and Lotus tweaked everything so this car would handle like a dream. The Supra was named to Car and Driver's 10 Best list in 1983 and 1984 and was named to Motor Trend's 1982 Import Car of the Year list. Quote, "This is a road car that stands up to intense inspection and hard driving in a way that defies its Toyota beginnings." In the United States, about 115,000 A60s were sold. And since we're in 1986, let's move it on to the third generation, the A70. Now this started in 1986.5 and ran until 1992. With the debut of the third generation Supra in mid-1986, the Supra separated from the Celica. The Supra kept its rear-wheel drive system, whereas the Celica switched to front-wheel drive. The Supra had softer lines, but it retained a hatchback body design with a Targa top fitted for a convertible feel. Horsepower was boosted to 200 with a new 3-liter dual overhead cam inline 6-cylinder with 4 valves per cylinder, but not a 2J. And in 1987, a turbocharger was added to the Supra. Still not a 2J, but this increased horsepower to 230 horsepower and reduced the 0 to 60 miles per hour time to around 6 seconds, which now we're getting pretty quick. The A70 featured front and rear double wishbone suspension, and it was the first Supra to include anti-lock brakes. Wow. A sport package with a limited slip differential and adjustable dampers was standard on these turbo versions. Now, despite its near 3,500-pound curb weight, Car and Driver loved the balanced suspension and pushed it to 0.83 Gs on the skid pad, which is quite good. They also said that, quote, "The Corvette may not feel the threat just yet, but Toyota is definitely in the big leagues now and it is showing its muscles," which meant they were taking this car to compete with Porsche, Corvette, maybe even some big league cars like Ferraris. When it was first produced, the A70 Supra cost $17,919 and Toyota sold about 109,000 of them. The next version would be significantly more expensive and less popular, but it would be considered Supra's pinnacle. And let's move it on to that car, the fourth generation, aka the Mark IV Supra, aka the A80. Now this car came about in 1993 and lasted until 1998. And with the debut of the A80 generation in 1993, the Supra's starting price was raised to $33,900 from the $25,280 of the previous year. The Supra was now available as a coupe or as a sport roof Targa, with the turbo models including an optional hoop-like rear wing that received a lot of flack, but it has held up well over time. People love it now. The A80 was built on a 5.5-inch shorter wheelbase than the Lexus SC Coupe, with an aluminum hood, roof, and bumper supports. It was also 4.2 inches shorter and 124 pounds lighter than the A70 model. The 5-speed manual and 4-speed automatic transmissions were retained, but the engine was replaced with the famed, yes we're here, 2JZ inline 6-cylinder, which produced 220 horsepower, wink wink, in standard form and 320 horsepower, wink wink, when twin turbochargers were added. This turbo was offered with the automatic or a 6-speed manual. Those turbos were designed to work in tandem, with the first spooling up at 2,500 RPM and the second generating thrust at 4,500 RPM. Awesome how sequential turbos work. Now, to make it stronger, the 2JZ featured an iron block instead of aluminium. This allowed the aftermarket to extract significantly more power from it, and we have seen that been done, with some people pushing nearly 2,000 horsepower. Now, according to Car and Driver, the turbo's 0 to 60 mile per hour time was 4.6 seconds. That is fast. That's faster than the Corvette, Nissan 300ZX Turbo, and the Acura NSX. The quarter mile was done in just 13.1 seconds. But since we're talking about fast and speed, we might as well talk about the 5th generation, the A90/A91. Now, with the FT1 concept car unveiled at the 2014 Detroit Auto Show, Toyota teased to the Supra's resurrection, as it had been gone for over 20 years. Toyota then teamed up with BMW to make it a reality in 2019 for the 2020 model year. The design of the FT1 was scaled down to fit the shorter car, and this resulted in an openly aggressive coupe with curves and ducts that won't work as well in the FT1's sleeker shape. The Z4 is BMW's convertible variant of that car. BMW basically did all the engineering for the A90 Supra, but it was tuned by Toyota. Involved in the development was the company president Akio Toyoda, a car enthusiast who intended to recreate the A80's performance in the modern era. Now, although the BMW 3-liter inline 6-cylinder is not a 2JZ, sadly for these fanboys, it has more power than its predecessor. It produced 335 horsepower and 365 pound-feet of torque for the 2020 model year. That's quite good. The 2021 A91 Supra had a 382 horsepower and 368 pound-feet of torque with a 0-60 mile per hour of 3.9 seconds. That is seriously fast. A 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder was also available, and it had 255 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. This 4-cylinder engine gets the Supra from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 5 seconds. Now, both of these engines are paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission that shifts crisply and quickly, but enthusiasts are still hoping for a manual transmission one day. The turbo 4-cylinder also contributes to a 200-pound weight reduction, and this lowers the curb weight to 3,150 pounds. That is extremely light for a Supra. Car reviewers say that the engineering of the modern Supra makes it a blast to drive. They say it's fast and frantic, like a McLaren 720S. Now, the Supra's tale is far from over, okay? There's certainly more to come. The manual transmission, a convertible body type perhaps, and a high-performance version called the Gazoo Racing, or TRD, are all possibilities for this car. Take it from the pros, you should buy a Supra over that dull car that you're planning to purchase now. Let us know which of these Supra models is your favorite in the comments below. Thanks for watching Vehicles TV, and we'll see you in the next one.